Yes? No? Maybe? Possibly? Oh, we're live. Sweet. All right. So, today's date, November 28th, 2018, and this is how the frack we got here. I'm your host of the most, Will Buchanan, and like always on How the Frack We Got Here, we basically try to take the events from last week and this week and currently and try to make sense of this wonderful ride that we call life. For all those that have never seen this before, this is your first time, we always do try to give an adult disclaimer before we start the How the Frack We Got Here podcast, and it goes a little something like this. This is an adult podcast, which means that things of adult nature, language, and things of a graphic nature may be shown. Viewer discretion is advised. And for all those that want to make the necessary adjustments, you can go ahead and do so in the next 3 seconds as I try to get everything else fixed up, because I should have done this beforehand. So take the next 3 seconds to go ahead and get that knocked out. And we're going to ride that out. Yeah. We're going to really ride that out. All right. We good? We good? We good. All right. I think we're good. Okay. So thanks, guys, for all that. And also for the simple fact of the matter, like I said, what can we say about this week so far? America, you're racist. Well, not really America. Mississippi. I think Mississippi finally came out. Mississippi finally came out and did the one thing that I did not think that was humanly possible. I mean, humanly possible. I mean, for the simple fact of the matter is, how can I stress this in so many ways? Matter of fact, I think it's just better that we just show it.
Looking Cindy Hyde-Smith
and
is the
actually
winner
it's
over Democrat Mike Espy in the runoff Senate race in Mississippi. Mr. John King is here. This is a final Senate race of the midterms, and it goes to Cindy Hyde-Smith.
It goes to Cindy Hyde-Smith, Don, in a state President Trump carried by 18 points 2 years ago. Cindy Hyde-Smith at the moment, a little over a 10-point margin there. So Republicans will say a win is a win. Democrats will say they made a pretty good run here. Now, we're calling this race because we've gone through this, and there's no way Cindy Hyde-Smith will win this race. I will say it's possible the margin will get a little bit closer as the final votes come in. Why do I say that? You see a lot of gray here in the western part of the state. There's blue all around it. This is where Mike Espy's old congressional district was out here. Democratic areas that have yet to report, but they're pretty small. You look down here, Jefferson County, less than 1% of the state population. Adams County, just over 1% of the state population, and so on as you look out here at these Democratic counties out here. So Mike Espy could make it a little closer, but Cindy Hyde-Smith, by running it up, pretty good in these red areas here. 60% down here, Harrison County. This is Biloxi, where President Trump was on the eve of the runoff. Neighboring counties here, 60%. So in places where the president visited, he was also in Tupelo last night. Let's come up here, nearly 70%, more than two-thirds of the vote there. And only half in, so Cindy Hyde-Smith could get some more votes here as well. So it is a double-digit margin right now. In the end, we know it will be a win for the Republicans. There'll be a lot of talk about whether that's a weak win. That'll be the conversation. Cindy Hyde-Smith will have to run for re-election in 2 years. She's finishing an uncompleted Senate term, so she'll be back on the ballot. But, Don, this is the big picture. As we have one House race still to count. We know Democrats have a net gain of 39. Republicans will find this as their only solace in this big year of a blue wave. 53 Republican seats come January. There are currently 51. So they will have a net +2. Now, 6-8 weeks ago, some Republicans thought they could get +4, even +5, some said. They didn't get that, but they will get a +2. So President Trump, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, will have some more space, if you will, to deal with in the Republican family as the president nominates a new attorney general, perhaps has more cabinet shakeup, has other judicial nominations come through. So the Trump agenda.
So basically, folks, for all those that don't know who Cindy Hyde-Smith is, Cindy Hyde-Smith, if you're watching my podcast from last week, as I pointed out, not only did she give the rhetoric of if I was invited to a public hanging, I would be on the front row. Yes, in Mississippi, where there is literally a history of lynchings associated with African Americans. And she had the nerve to turn around and tell somebody, if I was invited to a public hanging, I'd be on the front row. Wonderful political correctness. But then she turns around and says that voter suppression needs to be in place for all the liberal schools would not turn out so many voters. And she was caught again on camera. I know this is going to seem a little bit familiar just because, as I said before, in a lot of these things, this is the Trump effect. And Trump seems to get, and I'm going to be honest, and I've said this so many times, The only way you honestly could have voted for Trump is either you truly believed in what he was saying, or you're that much of an idiot, or you're a racist, or bigot, or xenophobe, or better yet, all the above. Because there is no way on God's green earth that a common person is going to sit there and look at Trump and go, I think he would make a great president. No. But then again, his rhetoric is reaching out to those racist, bigots, and xenophobes, which, ironically enough, are in rural states. Now, I could be wrong, but then again, Tennessee, where I live, is considered a red state. Now, for all those who I mean red state, I mean it's seen as conservative. Conservatives are very hypocritical sons of bitches. But then again, Democrats aren't any better because they can't unify. But again, when you look at Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, pretty much the South as you see fit, and maybe some other places up north, are seen as conservative just because people like the idea of saying conservative because they actually connect conservative values with family values, less control of government, and more freedom, which is the complete opposite if you think about it, because most Republicans want to use the government to actually use it as a lowering tool over those that may not agree with them in everything they say. You know, ergo birth control, ergo pro-life and pro-choice. So Cindy Hyde-Smith is basically following the Trump rhetoric. Trump came out there to Tupelo, Mississippi to rally for her and all that, and somehow, some way, she has now been elected again to the House of Representatives. She's been elected again, to the Senate. Yeah, my apologies. She's been elected to the Senate. And it's just amazing to me that if a person can sit there and show their blatant racism, that they will turn around and, for lack of better words, be embraced. It's like, and I've said it best, I know a lot of people are going to be who watch this are going, but Will, this is no different from anything else out there. There are people out there that, you know, they've been embracing their racism and their hatred. They've been proudly doing it. And you're right. We have now just gotten to the point now where it's just getting to the point to where it is literally it's almost like a badge of honor for these people to sit there and be bigots. And other people will eat that mess up. And it's sad that it happened, but it did happen. And the funny part about this is, when I say about the Trump effect, is this, that Trump believes in his own mind he is the hero of his own story. And he also believes that, you know, if you're not with him, that you're going to wind up losing the election. And in some cases, if you're a Republican and you don't side with Trump, this will be true. But it's also the funny part where Trump does believe that he's for everybody, which is going to be the next thing I'm going to show, which I kind of find funny. But let me actually give you some background on this person. Anybody know Mia Love? I mean, she was actually on the news not too long ago. The only person that actually had a black Republican. Let me actually go on a short rant about that. I did not know black Republicans existed because, again, the Republican Party is against minorities and women and immigrants. It is literally, the Republican Party is not the party of conservative family values. It is the party of bullshit tactics, and at the same time doing whatever it takes to get ahead. So it's amazing to me where I see other people, mainly women, who are literally Republicans. And honestly, it's like Bette Midler said in her tweet. Bette Midler said this, and I love her to death because she said it. She said a lot of women only voted for Trump because their husbands did. And apparently, that made some women, no, that's not true. Partly it is. Because a lot of the South, I mean, this is, again, the South, a lot of women are going to follow their husbands in voting. Not a lot of them are going to speak up. Please, oh please, tell me I'm wrong about that. But anyway, Mila, she actually had a critique of President Donald Trump, and Agent Orange, of course, didn't come to help her. So it was interesting what happened next, because she actually lost her district to a Democrat. And here's what she had to say about that.
I know conservative policies work. They lift everyone. They lift the poor, the young, the vulnerable, the black and the white. Our conservative policies save our young and unborn children. When the pundits tell us that we're out of luck, the deck is stacked against us, we say no. No way. Not in this country. Because under conservative policies, the deck is not stacked against us, and we all have a chance. Conservative policies make it so that no one in this country is predestined to be poor. I know because I've lived them. I've put them into action. I promoted them throughout our state and across the country. The problem is not the policy. It is that we are never taken into hearts and into homes. I have been so proud to be your representative in the state of Utah.
Oh.
I am.
Okay. So that part was interesting. So pretty much, sorry guys, I don't know what really happened in that situation. But anyway, she goes on to basically give her consignment speech. So I scrolled down here. I didn't notice this until now, but apparently Trump had something to say about that. And we hope it plays.
Had some that decided to, let's stay away. Let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad, but I feel just fine about it. Carlos Cubella, Mike Kaufman, too bad Mike, Mia Love. I saw Mia Love. She called me all the time to help her with a hostage situation, being held hostage in Venezuela. But Mia Love gave me no love. And she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia. And Barbara Comstock was another one. I mean, I think she could have won that race, but she didn't want to have any embrace. For that, I don't blame her. But she lost, substantially lost. Peter Roscom didn't want the embrace. Eric Paulson didn't want the embrace. And in New Jersey, I think he could have done well, but didn't work out too good. Bob Eugen, I feel badly because I think that's something that could have been won. That's a race that could have been won. John Faso, those are some of the people that, decided for their own reason not to embrace whether it's me or what we stand for, but
no, what's so interesting about now? Here's what's so interesting about that is just that Mia Love, despite her being a Republican, had a small little point. Is the fact that yes, she did ask Trump to help out the campaign, and Trump declined. And what's so interesting about that is that as Trump is naming off, and I said, we have never in our time seen a president turn around and name off people. He named off the people who lost. He named off Republican candidates that lost their elections, and in a very subtle way says, "You know what you didn't do? You didn't want the embrace. You didn't want a hug. You didn't want a hug. I give great hugs. I'm the best hugger. Believe me. And you didn't want a hug from me. You didn't want to kiss me." You know what it honestly was? Watching Trump turn around and name off people who lost is like watching The Godfather name off everybody that he whacked before the christening. That's what it sounds. That's what it seems like to me. It was you, Franco. It was you, Franco. Franco didn't embrace him, so Franco got whacked. And honestly, it just seems like with all these Republican candidates, Mia Love being another one, and of course he names off Barbara Comstock, Kaufman, every Republican candidate that lost the race, Trump brings up and says, "What's my problem?" And it's interesting that Mia Love, again, like I said, a black Republican, kind of like Candace Owens, who is really the black Tommy Lauren, but it is amazing to me how they turn around and they fill out this whole thing. And she made a point that the GOP does not care about minorities. And I'm sorry, but you're a little late to the party on that one. We've already known. And it's amazing to me that individuals are going to sit there and not come and realize that the GOP doesn't care. And I hear from the other side, Democrats don't care. And to a point, you would be almost right. Except the Democrats except when you look at the Democratic caucus and you look at the Republican caucus, you're going to notice one little detail. There's a lot of white on one side, and on the other side it actually has men and women of diverse ethnicities. On the Democratic side, Republicans, just get a jar of Hellmann's. That's about as close as you're going to get to that. But again, that was basically Agent Orange going out there and saying, you didn't roll with me, that's why you lost. And again, that's Hitler's playbook. Hitler's playbook was always about getting those who were susceptible to believe to follow him. And the funny part is, that's how he was successful in getting followers. That's how racism, racists and xenophobes, how Aryan Nation, nationalists, like Robert Shapiro and so many others, that's how they get people to follow them. Because people who are downtrodden and people who believe that, in my case, like I said, they believe their white privilege should have got them through and didn't, will believe someone else and sit there and go, this is bullshit. We deserve the same thing they got. And of course, hence the following. But also moving forward, speaking, since we're going to be sticking to Trump, we're going to go to his daughter, the one woman that, he reminds us too much of, that his daughter is so hot. His daughter's attractive. Look at her. I think it's kind of creepy because as a father, you're going to sit there and say your daughter's hot. Let's be honest, Agent Orange, you want to fuck your own daughter. So that's the reason why you have no issue against pedophiles and predators. Anyway, she actually goes on this, she actually goes on to ABC News about the use of private emails for government business. So why does that sound familiar? Because that's what Trump ran off of. And here was her answer to when she was asked about using her own private email server.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No. Mine also not been deleted. Nor was there anything of substance, nothing confidential that was within that.
This is the single biggest scandal since Watergate. How can Hillary manage this country when she can't even manage her emails? Or look at her emails, which put America's entire national security at risk. You can't review 650,000 new emails in 8 days. Can't do it, folks. Hillary Clinton is guilty. She knows it. The FBI knows it. Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted and gone to jail for what she did.
So what's interesting about that is pretty much this was, of course, what Trump ran on his presidential campaign against Hillary Clinton. He pretty much used the emails, and he also used James Comey of the FBI to investigate Clinton, and therefore came up with the whole thing of that there's a mystery behind her emails. Her private email server that she was using as Secretary of State, and the 650,000 emails that he pretty much got from WikiLeaks, because WikiLeaks hacked the server and actually gave that information away. Which is why Julian Assange is still sitting in Ecuador, hoping to God he doesn't get extradited back to the U.S., because Lord knows if he did, he'd be seen as a traitor, and of course we all know what happens to traitors. So, Ivanka Trump, who sat there and says, in her white privileged self, turns around and says, well, no, it doesn't apply to me, because my emails are not of substance. They haven't been deleted, they're still there. So, for all those that are still wondering why Ivanka Trump is running her own business from the White House, well, it's a place of opportunity, because you have the backing of, you basically have the American president wanting to fuck you, so you pretty much can do whatever the fuck you want. At the same time, she's still running her businesses, mind you, which is kind of funny that none of her businesses actually have American stores or workers. They're all overseas. And then has the nerve to sit there and say, well, my emails are not of substance. Really? Neither was Hillary Clinton's. Hillary, I'll tell you one thing. Say what you want about Hillary Clinton. That woman has been investigated so many times that at this point she could probably walk through a police station, walk through a congressional hearing with a smile on her face. Because think about this for a second. She was basically interrogated for Benghazi. She was interrogated for her emails. She was interrogated for her husband's speech and remarks during her presidential campaign. No one ever understood the fact that, yes, when it comes down to it, she was more qualified than Trump about it. But at the same time, the emails, which again WikiLeaks had hacked, and then somehow Donald Trump knew about it, and then from there made a big deal about it on his campaign, had a whole bunch of degenerates talking about lock her up, and you don't even know why you're even saying lock her up. You're saying lock her up because the crowd's saying it. So thanks, so good, so you're susceptible to peer pressure. That's nice. So it is interesting to me, how in the world can we sit there and say above all else that honestly you're saying lock her up, but yet your daughter does the same fucking thing. Your daughter turns around and does the same thing. And yet she's just there and say, well, my emails were not of substance. You know, the funny part about this whole thing is, it is amazing to me that you have individuals come on here and they, like part of the Trump family, and they just have this highbrow, well, I'm above all this, privileged self about them. And I'm thinking to myself, no, if you put Hillary under the same scrutiny for her emails, then I believe that, you know, your would-be daughter/concubine needs to be under that too. And the whole thing about her being in the White House, I'm sorry, if she is not serving, and that's my whole thing about the White House. I mean, Trump has so many people in there that are honestly in a non-White House serving capacity, that how in the world is that place not a security risk as it stands? That's just me on that. But again, for someone that turns around and sits there and says they have nothing to worry about because her emails, no, honey, you're in the public sector. You don't get to sit there and say what's private and whatnot. Not when you're on our dime. But again, Trump wants to fuck her, so she's pretty much going to be safe, unfortunately. But another thing I did want to bring up, because it just seemed very apparent right now, was that the migrant caravan. I hate saying that, and that'll be the last time I do say that. But the immigrants who are seeking asylum at the U.S. because of what's going on in their countries, from violence, from drug cartels, from just, you know, lack of jobs and not being able to support their families, they're all coming to the U.S. And of course, Trump dubbed them this caravan of murderers, rapers. We don't know who's all coming, but I'm going to make it sound so bad that we just have to do something. Something has to be done. And so he sends, like I said in my previous podcast, he sent a military convoy down to there of 5,000 or so troops at the border as they were putting in razor wire and fencing. And now some of those immigrants have actually reached the border, and I'm kind of pissed to play this, but I mean the world needs to see what's going on down there.
Demonstration along the southern border threatening to spiral into a full-blown crisis. More migrants are flooding into northern Mexico as living conditions get even worse. And now U.S. officials are warning of a massive backlog, saying it could be weeks or months before they begin processing asylum seekers.
This morning, the growing debate over how to handle the migrant surge along the Mexican border as conditions grow increasingly desperate. Days after border agents used tear gas to repel migrants seeking asylum in the U.S., thousands of migrants are living in tents, growing more vulnerable and frustrated. The mother, captured in this picture, now seen around the world, is talking about her escape. Maria Meza is seen grabbing her twin daughters as they run from tear gas. Holding one of the 3 canisters that landed near them, Meza says they could not breathe when the canisters went off. Meza is a mother of 9 with 1 son operating in the U.S. She said she can't return to Honduras because she's facing threats from drug dealers after they forced one of her other sons to join a gang. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is now investigating the use of the tear gas, but the agency is defending those agents, calling it a chaotic situation. A sports complex in Tijuana is now housing nearly 6,000 migrants, 3 times more than the venue's capacity. The city's mayor calling it a humanitarian crisis. ABC's Matt Gutman is there.
Behind me is the San Ysidro crossing. What you're seeing here, 20 lanes of northbound traffic, and during all that chaos, everything here was completely shuttered for nearly 7 hours.
And the ordeal is far from over. Border Patrol is now warning of a massive backlog, saying it can't even begin to process the asylum claims of those in the migrant caravan for at least 5 weeks
because the system was already at capacity before the caravan arrived. And then there are new questions about a government facility in Texas housing teens who crossed the border alone. A senior official says the facility is near capacity with only a few beds left. An average of about 150 minors are now crossing the border every day.
So, again, it's heartbreaking. Really, first and foremost, it's heartbreaking. Just because, like I said, these people have literally came from areas to where their lives were threatened, only to come to America because it's not like we're running out of room, but at the same time, both sides have to investigate the use of tear gas. Okay, so let me point something out here. So the U.S. and Mexico are investigating who fired the tear gas after Agent Orange sat there and said, "Well, use tear gas, bombs, whatever you need to stop them." Tear gas was used. It's almost like I want to sit there and go, I can't really blame Mexico because Trump pretty much sat there and said, "Well, use this." And what happened? It's almost like when he said that the press were the enemy of the people. What did one gunman do? One gunman decided to go into a newsroom and shoot 4 people. One person in Florida decided to send mail bombs to all of Trump's so-called critics. So again, it's heartbreaking to see so many people who are just wanting to find better ways of life. Because, like I said, say what you want about the United States, we are a nation of immigrants. The only people that are here originally are Native Americans, and in my mind, they still got a bad deal. Like, honestly, they should be getting a lot. Honestly, Native Americans, minorities of slave descendants, should be getting a lot more fair deals than everybody else at this point. Call it what you will. But it is amazing to me now. It's just like you keep on saying, "Well, we don't know how to handle all the asylum claims." Well, that's because you guys did not want to fix the immigration system. Because truth be told, you didn't want. And the realest thing I can say about that situation is, they never wanted so many immigrants that they couldn't control. And that to me is kind of like, it's almost like a slave moment. It's almost like a slave field mentality. You want just enough workers to make sure that your garden is picked, your lawn is mowed, your food is cooked, your children are watched, and that the things around the house are done. But you wouldn't like it if there's a lot more of them than there are of you, and that makes a lot of people frightened for no reason. And that's how you make bigots. Because you're always going to fear what you do not know. But once that fear turns to anger and anger leads to suffering, then that goes all downhill from there. But truth be told, instead of sending 5,000 soldiers, why not just send 5? I mean, you would think you would send relief and humanitarian aid and lawyers and immigration process and actually get these people exactly what they're asking for and actually alleviate the problem. Not actually sending military, because when you send military, you're showing force. If you actually send relief, then you're showing assistance. But, we don't expect, Agent Orange to make that decision, considering his mom's a legal immigrant, considering his wife was a legal immigrant until not too long ago, and his wife's parents were legal immigrants through chain migration, which he's against, by the way. So I just think it's kind of funny where it's like, do as I say or not as I do, that Trump wants to do that. But again, the only way that's actually going to get better is that instead of actually preventing, we need to be accepting. Because let's be honest, you're not going to stop. The realistic part of the thing is you're not going to stop individuals from crossing the border, and just shooting them is not going to deter them. So the only way that we can actually address this problem is to embrace it. Simple and plain. But again, Agent Orange is always going to fall to his base, and his base is full of nationalists and racists. Which are basically one and the same, because nationalist is just a nice word for saying racist, is what it is. But switching forward, because, I always love talking about the tariffs. And if anybody that wasn't paying attention to what I said about tariffs are actually taxes on goods and services, whether they're exported out of the U.S. or imported into the U.S. Of course, Trump had actually imposed tariffs, and of course, other countries, in reaction, have imposed tariffs of their own in the U.S. And I kept saying this entire time, tariffs are never good because those are true job killers, not actually giving health care to everybody. So I reported a few weeks ago about Ford actually going to be cutting their jobs and losing money because of the tariffs. Well, they're about to have another automaker join them, and that would be GM, as it was reported on ABC.
I'm just weeks now until Christmas, and General Motors has now revealed it will lay off workers in Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland, thousands of jobs, and at least 3 vehicles will no longer be made. ABC's Edith Pilgrim is in Detroit tonight.
Tonight, major cuts at car giant GM. Nearly 15,000 jobs eliminated, a whopping 15% of the company's workforce.
And all 5 plants slated to shut down by the end of next year, including those in Warren, Michigan, White Marsh, Maryland, Warren, Ohio, and Detroit.
We're going to come back hard, and we're going to try to convince them that a modern plant in an area where we can get a good workforce is an asset.
GM is citing a shift to focus more on automation and high SUV sales. The company announcing they're eliminating the low-selling Chevrolet Cruze, Volt, and Impala cars from their roster.
Today, the president not hiding his frustration with CEO Mary Barra.
That car is not selling. It's a Cruze, Chevy Cruze. It's not selling. But ultimately, she's going to come back and she's going to put something. But I told her I'm not happy about it.
The president also asked if increased tariffs due to a trade war are to blame.
No, not tariffs. That has nothing to do with tariffs. She said the car was not selling.
GM acknowledges the tariffs aren't to blame for the cuts, but in June issued a stark warning that, quote, increased import tariffs could lead to a smaller GM. And tonight say the trade policy has cost them $1.4 billion.
So let's get to Eva. She's live in Detroit tonight. And Eva, while nearly 15,000 jobs are being cut, as you reported there, some of those workers will be given the chance to try to relocate to other plants.
That's right, David. GM says it plans to expand operations in those well-performing areas. About 3,000 of those workers will be up for those new positions. David?
Eva Pilgrim with us tonight. Thank you, Eva.
Hi, everyone.
Now, that was actually one. Now, this is actually the other story I found out where, of course, after Trump now hearing the news about GM actually cutting their jobs, which is really funny that, let me actually transition that back to me for a second. So it's really funny that GM had sat there and said that the tariffs have nothing to do with the fact of cars not selling. As you'll see Trump will try to turn around and say, well, it's not about the tariffs, there are no tariffs on this one. And yet, GM releases a memo saying that increased tariffs could lead to a smaller GM. Ford blamed the tariffs because they had to cut back and lose 15, and they actually lost 15,000 jobs. And now GM is about to do the same. So, no offense, Trump, but you're kind of full of shit because tariffs are, and this is what I was talking about. When the tariffs actually do come into effect, it will affect everything from cars, food. I mean, they've already bailed out the farmers because farmers were the first people to actually get hit with that, but they got bailed out by Trump because, like I said, a lot of that is Trump's voter base. If he lost them, then of course maybe the midterms could have turned out differently. But he made sure the farmers were bailed out, and of course everybody else was left to the wind. So keeping on with the story about GM, this other story was basically about after Trump had sat there and said that GM was cutting back. Of course, he made the promise to GMs that you will not lose one plant, you will not lose one job, you'll actually get more jobs and more plants, and that turned out to be shit. So here's his response to basically what GM is doing.
Like the one here beside me, are where they manufacture passenger vehicles. So GM says that part of its decision is in response to changing consumer preferences about cars. But the human toll here on the ground is real. Lots of local business owners and employees wondering what's going to happen next. This morning, President Trump is on the offense against General Motors, deflecting criticism and blaming rising interest rates after the auto giant announced Monday it would close 5 plants, leaving 15,000 workers in limbo. The president now threatening to slash government subsidies to GM, tweeting very disappointed with General Motors and their CEO Mary Barra for closing plants. The U.S. saved General Motors, and this is the thanks we get. In a statement Tuesday, GM said it appreciates the actions it says the Trump administration has taken to improve the competitiveness of U.S. manufacturing, adding many of the U.S. workers impacted will have the opportunity to shift to other GM plants.
When you think about this level of uncertainty so close to the holidays, what goes through your mind? It's hard. It hurts. It does.
After 21 years as a GM employee, Peggy Jones is shocked by the news.
The grandmother of 5 says she and her colleagues are now unsure of their futures.
What's the feeling right now in this community? Because it seems like this plant was a major source of jobs.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's more than just us inside the plant. There's all the businesses around us. It's really, I mean, we're still in shock mode right now. It hasn't really sunk in.
Jones works at the plant in Hamtramck, Michigan, just miles away from GM's headquarters.
Everything you see around you grew up out of the auto industry.
President Trump pledged to bring back American jobs on the 2016 campaign trail.
If I'm elected, you won't lose one plant. You'll have plants coming into this country. You're going to have jobs again.
But now, many here are worried that Washington can't save them.
This is going to affect Metro Detroit as a whole.
Which is why auto unions want GM to make a promise to its workers.
Invest in the U.S. Invest in the American citizens who invested in you.
Well, citizens like Peggy Jones.
We can't give up. We can't quit. We still have hope.
But workers like Peggy Jones are still showing up to work this morning. In fact, she's inside that plant now as we speak. But she says that General Motors only said that production would stop in June, but they haven't announced when their official last day will be. Savannah, Toda?
So that alone should kind of tell you a lot right there. Is, for the simple fact of the matter, this is all tariffs. And tariffs not only affect, like I said, not only affect what you drive and what you eat, what you drink, and things of that nature. Just like you saw with that plant closing, plants that open up in that situation, businesses are springing up around those plants. I mean, you have restaurants, hotels, things of that nature, and a lot of that business came from the fact that there was a nearby plant there, and that the economy from that plant went into that city. So now if that plant's shutting down, then a lot of those businesses are going to be affected as well. So again, tariffs do have this cascading effect. And when tariffs are imposed and you take away one major component of a local economy, it will affect others. So it's a lot of the lines like saying, like I said, Ford's cut its labor force back. GM's planning to cut its labor force back. And personally, for GM, Dodge, all those that got auto bailouts, I'm going to be honest with y'all. On a side note, everybody, it was our tax dollars that actually bailed out the auto industry. That being said, every American should have got a car of their choice. That's like saying, we gave you billions to bail you out. Every American who pays taxes should be able to go onto a car lot, say, I helped you guys out, give me the car I want, pretty much pink slip and all, and let me drive off. That's the way it should have been done. Because I'm sorry, if we're gonna bail, like in my opinion, and not trying to be funny, but that's something I wish that would happen. It would be along the lines of saying, you know what, we bailed out the auto industry. The auto industry owes every American at least 2 cars. They can afford it. But what's sad about this now is, like I said, another part of this reality is just that we need to accept that what has happened previously in America, as far as manufacturing jobs, as far as plant jobs, things of that nature, the saddest part of it is that with our economy, we cannot compete with other countries. Like, for example, you could probably produce the same cars in Mexico for pennies on the dollar than what you can produce here in America. You used to get the same thing with steel. I mean, we get steel from overseas because for companies it's cheaper to produce and export versus having here in America. Because again, our economy works against us. Because when you have a capitalist economy, they are going to sit there and try to get as much as they can out of every dime of every dollar. At the same time, it's always been against the workers because the workers have to fight against the wage. The actual business itself tries to make a profit. Hence always the seesaw. So and of course, with another thing that they're not talking about is automation. Like, a lot of jobs are starting to become the way of automation. Robots are being able to do our job. Robots are being able to do the job of humans and probably do it for a lot longer because robots don't need to eat or sleep. They can continually keep working until they keep producing product, which is different from a human because, like I said, every human needs 8 hours of sleep, no matter how you cut the rug on that. We all need to rest. We all need to relax. We all need time off. We can't work ourselves into mindless drones because, honestly, that's how you wind up dying, is working yourself to death. So a lot of automation is starting to go into this, and that's the reason why on a future podcast we're going to talk about universal basic income, which is an idea that's being passed around just because the lack of jobs, partly because of overseas competition, is also automation. So it's leaving a lot of individuals who need an income, but the actual job area may not be available for them, is a way to sustain them. But again, that's universal basic income, and we'll get to that on another podcast. But for the moment, tariffs are really killing what's actually already left. Now, does this mean, I mean, of course, being in a Republican presidency, the economy always falters. You can go through the history books. There has yet to be a Republican presidency where the economy soared. It's always been on the downhill and collapsed, and always took a Democratic presidency 8 years to get it back up to normal before Republicans came back in and crashed it again. So, moving right along, climate change. If you've been in California, and like I said, my heart goes out to you guys in California right now, because those wildfires I've never seen one up close, but to be those firefighters, which I had to give them all the respect in the world, to hop into that inferno and try to put out that fire, y'all gutsy as shit, I'll tell you that much. But anyway, of course, with California wildfires getting more and more apparent, the whole idea of climate change comes up. And what was actually found out about climate change was, well, baby Huey decided that he was going to use his own brain against the climate change report, and basically this is what he had to say about it.
I've seen it, I've read some of it, and it's fine. Yeah, I don't believe it. No, I don't believe it. And here's the other thing. You're going to have China and Japan and all of Asia and all of these other countries, addresses our country. Right now we're at the cleanest we've ever been, and that's very important to me. But if we're clean, but every other place on earth is dirty, that's not so good. So I want clean air, I want clean water, very important.
With me now, CNN government regulation correspondent Renee Marsh. And Renee, obviously the scientists behind this massive report have come to the opposite conclusion, and they say if nothing is done, things will worsen, and specifically the U.S. economy.
And you're absolutely right. The president's comments just a while ago, extremely jarring, considering this is the work of, in part, of many federal agencies that are run by his own political appointees. That aside, getting into the report, the general takeaway is if these dangerous greenhouse gases aren't curbed, global temperatures could increase some 9 degrees. More people will die, and 10% of the U.S. economy will take a hit. Now, this report makes it clear that every part of the United States will be affected. There is no region that will be spared.
So, pretty much, what's going on with that? So, like I said, if at this point, if you're still denying climate change, you're a fucking idiot. That's just no way to put that. 97% of the scientific community do believe that climate change is real. It is a man-made phenomenon that is actually making more greenhouse gases, that actually is producing more greenhouse gases to where we actually have terms of global warming. Polar ice caps melting, sudden storms and tornadoes happening more frequent, hurricanes and more tropical storms happening. Even wildfires that are going on in California right now are all examples of climate change. And if we don't actually, and scientists have been warning us that we are rapidly approaching the point of no return, which means that unless we start actually reversing the things we've been doing, we're probably not going to have a sustainable planet in the coming decades. And you can't argue the science on that. But yet Trump decides to. It's like, well, no, I don't like it. And I've realized you can't give Agent Orange any news that doesn't praise him. Because, okay, granted, nobody wants to see any bad news about climate change. But President Obama did, and he said, okay, I'm going to put in, we were a part of the clean air policy, the Paris Act. until you pulled aside of that. You were a part of the Paris Accords until you pulled aside of that, Trump. We also did have EPA standards on carbon emissions and greenhouse gases that was actually going into effect and was helping until, oh yeah, you knocked that down too. There was also restrictions on waterways dumping and drilling into certain areas of the U.S., including wildlife reserves and historical areas. But again, you lifted that too. Because, who's not to say that fracking doesn't increase climate change? Surprise, it does. So again, everything that Trump has done, which I always say Trump just does everything that the black guy did, but he just undoes it. And now, here we are again, still trying to figure it. He says like, well, climate change isn't real. Okay, you can be like the rest of the flat Earth people, where they say the Earth is flat, and I'm like, well, if the Earth was flat, explain gravity. That's all I'm going to say, because gravity can only be and gravity can only exist in a spherical area, which means that the Earth is round. If the Earth was flat, we'd all be dead. But again, this is just Trump basically being himself. If it's not about him, of course, if it's bad news, he does what he does best. He deflects. He says, well, China and everybody else needs to get on the rebound, not realizing that China's pollution has actually decreased. And as far as him saying clean air and clean water, Trump, I hate to break it to you, but there's a city called Flint, Michigan that's like, motherfucker, we still don't got clean water. And it's been years now that we don't have clean water. And it is amazing to me how he still thinks that we're doing great, and we're not. But again, if you ask any Trump supporter, they'll be like, well, that's just fake news. No, it's not. See, the thing about fake news is, fake news, you can't say fake news on science. Science is real whether you believe it or not. And that is the beauty of it. Neil deGrasse Tyson said it best. You cannot argue evidence. And the evidence is, unless we do something about climate change, you might as well get used to probably an uninhabitable planet, if you live long enough to see it. But again, climate change, as far as that goes, I've had people sit there and argue about climate change. Well, the planet's cooling. No, it's not. It's increasing. We've actually had longer summer days in the last 4 years than we did in the last 20 years, and the 1 years past combined. It's not cooling down, genius. It's heating up. So, also another thing, like I said, because Trump seems to outdo himself every week, was that of the Jamal Khashoggi. For all those that haven't seen my podcast, was this the first time you're seeing it, aside from thank you for watching it, there's also Jamal Khashoggi, which was basically the American reporter who was actually killed in a killed in a foreign embassy. And of course, there's a lot of smoke about it. But the CIA had concluded that the prince of the Saudi Arabian ruling family had basically ordered the hit for this man to be killed. And now the most recent story that's came out is that there is a tape of the entire ordeal, and I hate to say it, there actually is a tape of this poor soul being murdered. And Trump doesn't want to listen to the tape because he says it's a suffering tape, and I don't need to. What was more surprising about it was his national security advisor, and his answer was just, well, let you hear it for yourself.
I guess I should ask you why you think I should. What do you think I'll learn from it?
Security advisor might have access to that intelligence.
How many in this room speak Arabic? Yeah. Well, if you want me to listen to it, what am I going to learn from? If they were speaking Korean, I wouldn't learn any more from it either. Well, then I can read a transcript too.
So you don't think it's important to hear that?
I'm just trying to make the point that everybody who says, why don't you listen to the tape, unless you speak Arabic, what are you going to get from it?
So, unless you speak Arabic, what are you going to get from the tape? First off, it's a tape of hearing an American being killed. And second of all, I think, and this is personally me, I think there is incriminating evidence on that tape that says that the Saudi family is responsible for that man's death. But because Agent Orange went against his own CIA and even barred the head of the CIA from testifying for a Senate hearing, is the simple fact of the matter is that there's a lot of smoke. Again, this is why I say, as much as I'm waiting on Mueller, that there is a mountain of obstruction of justice that President Trump could be brought up on. It's the simple fact of the matter is, whenever there's out there something that can be very damaging, he seems to have this way, as the president, of obstructing it. He has prevented the head of the CIA, who disagreed with him about the entire assessment, because they're the ones saying more than likely the Prince of Saudi Arabia ordered the hit on Khashoggi. But because Saudi Arabia pays Trump a lot of money for his hotels, of course he's going to side with them. And as a national security advisor, that is scary to hear him sit there and say, well, why should I listen to the tape? I just read a transcript. It is almost mystifying to see how these people got their jobs. Because, again, if you're a national security advisor, you hear this tape, and the only thing I can say, aside from hearing a man suffer, hearing a poor man being killed, I can only think of the fact of the matter is that there's incriminating evidence on that tape, and he does not want that to be, and he does not want to be heard, or better yet, he doesn't want to hear that himself. But again, it's all Trump's cabinet. He only picks the best and the brightest. So another thing I was going to go is, speaking of that, like I said, speaking of Mueller, there was a breaking story out today, and if you've been watching CNN or watching MSNBC or even watching Fox News, you've probably heard about it.
Breaking news, a major development in the Russia investigation, a new court filing by the special counsel Bob Mueller claiming Paul Manafort lied to Mueller's team and the FBI repeatedly. Okay, now here's the crucial point. After he pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. So after he reached this whole deal, he lies to Bob Mueller's team, he lies to the FBI. CNN Justice correspondent Jessica Schneider is out front. Jessica, I mean, this is hugely significant. What did Manafort allegedly lie about? And if this happened, what does it mean for this plea that he agreement that he entered into?
Yeah, the plea talks at this point, they're over. And the lingering question here after this filing is what exactly did Paul Manafort lie about? The special counsel will only say that he lied on a variety of matters, and then in this filing, they say that they're going to expand upon exactly what he lied about in a future court filing. So remember that Paul Manafort, he's been working with Mueller's attorneys since he pleaded guilty to those 2 charges in Washington, D.C. back in September, but now the special counsel calling off the cooperation, saying in that filing just moments ago that Paul Manafort lied to the FBI, lied to the special counsel's office on a variety of subjects, and really now they're finished. No more talks, no more opportunity to cooperate, and they're ready for that federal judge to sentence Paul Manafort. You know, again, the filing doesn't really specify how he lied, what he lied about, but we know that Manafort has been meeting with Mueller's team for about 2 months now, and that was all in exchange for that possibility that they would ask for a lesser sentence on the 2 charges that he pleaded guilty to. One of them was conspiracy against the U.S., another conspiracy to obstruct justice because of his attempts to tamper with witnesses. And another interesting thing here, Aaron, on top of those charges, of course, Manafort was found guilty by that Virginia jury on 8 counts back in August. In that case, he faced up to 20 years on that conviction, and that sentencing was also on hold in that case. But now everything is off the table here. Mueller's team, they're calling off those future talks. They're saying to the judge, let's get right to sentencing. Manafort, meanwhile, his team, Aaron, saying that he was truthful, he didn't lie. But of course now it's up to the judge to see how this moves forward.
Yep. So basically, what you've actually seen there is, well, some more substance to the story that, of course, Mueller's prosecution team has sat there and decided that, yes, Manafort basically has been lying. Now, in a separate story that actually came a little bit earlier before the podcast started, was that Trump had sat there and said that a pardon for Manafort wouldn't be completely out of the question, which would suggest that had Manafort been lying this entire time, only to have Trump pardon him, would Trump pardon him? Because if Trump does pardon him, then kind of looks a little shady that you're pardoning your former campaign manager, because he is facing charges of obstruction of justice and campaign financing laws, which are all felonies, and he's already been sentenced, but because of his agreement, it was preventing sentencing from happening, which seems to be out the door now as the whole deal is off and the whole charges being, like I said, Mueller may wind up throwing the book at him, but it depends on what Trump does, because if Trump does pardon him, in my opinion, then I'm sorry, you can't sit there and say that shit does not look guilty as all get out. That's just me. Because the simple fact of the matter, you just can't, literally, folks, you just can't just sit there and say that, you really can't just sit there and say, well, it's only because of this, that, and the other, and he has the right to do so. And you're like, well, no, because there's a lot wrong in that scenario. And there's so much wrong in that scenario because if Trump is giving off the indication that he is about to turn around and pardon this individual, then that just basically means that there's a lot. Instead of us saying there's a lot of smoke, now there's a fucking fire. And again, I keep hoping Mueller is just waiting to release this. And like I said, with him, breaking his agreement, that means that whatever he has lied about is going to be in court. And of course, for most court filings, unless they rule it to be sealed, will be made public, which means that we're probably going to see exactly what he actually lied about. And if so, in goes the race of, was baby Huey involved, which it's hard to, which at this point, it's hard to say that he didn't know. At this point, that whole needle of less than likely is slowly moving forward to almost, oh yeah, the motherfucker knew. But the last thing I want to talk about is, I know it's been a while, for it be Thanksgiving, like I said, we're post-Thanksgiving now, which means, a lot of families got to hang out, have some turkey, got to, chill, watch some football. And I feel bad because, like I said, for most Thanksgivings, Black Friday usually follows after that. And because Black Friday, there was a shooting in which the cops had shot the wrong individual. And by wrong individual, I mean a black man. But I'll play this video so that way it gets the full story.
It says believed police had killed the wrong person when they shot a black man at an Alabama shopping mall on Thanksgiving. 3 gunshot victims can be seen in the video, including E.J. Bradford. Hoover police have offered shifting explanations for why they mistook Bradford for an active shooter. Protesters gathered last night at the mayor's home to demand answers. Mark Strassman is outside police headquarters in Hoover, south of Birmingham. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. We've been pushing for answers in this shooting, but state investigators say they won't comment on an active case, and Hoover police, despite a pledge of transparency, never got back to us. In their latest statement, they insisted that Bradford was holding his gun when they first responded at the mall.
They just killed that man in cold blood. They just seen that man had a gun on him. They shot that man down for no reason.
Witness video shows the aftermath. E.J. Bradford, shot by police at the River Chase Galleria Mall.
The police seen that boy got a gun. He probably got a gun license and everything.
Bradford was armed. The 21-year-old had a legal concealed weapons permit. At first, police in Hoover, Alabama insisted he had wounded 2 people earlier at the mall. They quickly backpedaled. Bradford was not the gunman. The real gunman remains at large. At Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church, a civil rights landmark, the Bradford family's anger and frustration was shared by several hundred supporters. It was too much for April Pipkins, the victim's mother. She collapsed in grief. Emantic Bradford Sr. is his father.
I gotta bury my baby boy. It hurts me to the core because being at home every day ain't gonna be no fun because I can't talk to my child.
Bradford family attorney Ben Crump argues E.J. was killed because police saw a black man holding a gun.
There's some suggestion that to stop the bad guys with guns, we need to have the good guys with guns. Well, E.J. Bradford was a good guy with a gun.
Bradford's family is demanding the release of all videos from the shooting at the mall, including whatever was recorded by the shooting officer's body camera. Witnesses have told the family that Bradford was trying to guide bystanders to safety when he was shot. Gail, when you're around his parents, you can feel just how raw their pain is.
I know, Mark. We all feel it here in the studio. The mom passing out for grief, the dad who is a police officer, was a police officer. And I think the attorney, Benjamin Crump, makes a good point. People say good guy with a gun. He was a good guy with a gun who was trained.
Yeah, an army veteran. They should release
that video. And it should be transparency in this, because we all need to learn from this. What is our implicit bias about this story? There's a lot more on this story, I think.
And interesting, Nora, that they won't release a video. That says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fair point. It is a very fair point. It's a very fair point to where they sat there and said they're not going to release the video. And you've heard me talk on podcasts, this one or Off Limits, where I've sat there and said, it is amazing to me because I have yet to get an answer on this. But if you're black, and I've said it, but if you're black and police stop you, you now have a set of fears like, am I going to make it home just because somebody who's probably been overworked and has a gun is liable to reach for it first before actually trying to ascertain the situation? Do I have to sit here and be calm and do his job, and when he should be doing his job, be calm? And in this situation, just like that young man on Black Friday was branded as a shooter before anything was done. And of course, I shouldn't be surprised because it's Alabama. I shouldn't be surprised because it's Birmingham. I shouldn't be surprised because, and you can call it what you will, when you're black, the chances of you surviving police in any situation is almost like the same with lottery right now. Whereas I've seen, well, let's be honest, you've seen white people, and I'm not saying all you white people, but I'm saying the white people who have been armed to the teeth, who have killed individuals, who have held people hostage, cops have been able to bring in safely with no problem. So you're telling me that cops in Kentucky can bring a man in who was armed and shooting black people and bring him in safely, but you're telling me a black man who was in the armed forces, whose father was a cop, who had a legal concealed carry permit, that by witness standards was actually helping people, while the actual shooter who hasn't been caught, and yet the police give and like the lawyer of the family said, how in the world can you argue that the cops were only threatened because it was a black man with a gun? How else can you sit there and defend that? You know, the NRA is definitely not going to defend them because the NRA is racist. The NRA is never going to defend a person of color from exercising their Second Amendment rights. But if so-called Little Miss Kansas wants to walk around campus with her AR-15 on her backpack, the NRA will support her wholeheartedly. But a legal carrying African American, and he gets killed by police, the NRA is silent. The NRA is racist. You should know that already. And in this case, like I said, most cops will literally shoot a black man first, but will try to talk a Caucasian male down second. And people wonder, and I've said this all the time, people truly wonder the prejudice that minorities have against police. It's not racism, it's prejudice. Because prejudice. I mean, the police literally have this thing. I mean, like I said, a lot of white supremacist groups have infiltrated law enforcement, all with the FBI and so forth. So you do have a lot of individuals who are wearing a badge who will use and abuse that power to kill minorities. And that doesn't produce racism. In fact, that produces prejudice. And people always there and say, well, if you just do what they said, and I hate that. I hate that excuse to the core. If you do what they said, you still get killed. If you have a legal permit, you get killed. If you have a seatbelt on, you get killed. If you follow their instructions with your back to them, you get killed. So anything that we do always winds up in a body bag. So why in the world should I trust the police when they can't even trust themselves? And on another note, with that poor man's death, like I said, he was enlisted in the armed forces, not a bit of trouble. His father, a former police officer. So again, what other excuse to those on the Blue Lives Matter bullshit can sit there and say in the situation, except the cops, 4 of them shot at one man? And you wonder why civilian oversight for police is needed. Because the police don't need to answer to the police need to answer to those who protect and serve. And if it means that they are stripped, and honestly, and here's another thing, and here's another suggestion, I wish I was in office I could do this, that I would actually get a law passed for every killing that the police do on anybody, not just minorities, if they wind up killing a person and it's unjustified. As a matter of fact, if it's just downright homicide, then the pension fund for law enforcement should be paid out to that victim's families. Now think about that for a second. Every time the victim's families get paid out for a wrongful death, it comes out of the police pension. I wonder how many unlawful shootings the number of unlawful shootings would drop if the police themselves are held to pay and not the city. But again, it's one of those things. I hate to say it's the common reality, but what else can I say in that situation aside from the fact of the matter is that now, like, every black man has to sit there and face that reality of, when we leave the house, are we going to make it back? Or if I have a son, or if I have a daughter, I have to sit there and give them this talk of how to be around police. Call it what you will, aside as a black people only group of people out there that we have to give this talk to our children. Nobody else is. But again, it's a lot of things that need to change about that. And I'm sorry, body cams only do so much. In the age of transparency, if the police aren't releasing these videos and things of that nature, there's something to hide. But again, it shouldn't be the police investigating the police. It should be civilian oversight investigating the police actions and holding them accountable, is the way it should be. But the one thing, like I said, now I'm about to wrap this up. And like I said, thank you guys for all watching. I know I started a little bit late tonight, but I apologize. But thank you guys for all watching. But I always, with all this doom and gloom, I know I usually talk about and try to bring up because I always want people to stay informed and things of that nature. I always try to find something funny because you know why? We all need something to laugh at. We all need something that, makes us forget about troubles for a while. And so I came across this wonderful little gem on Facebook, and I thought to myself, I wonder if this was ever going to be a real commercial. So before I play it, it's pretty much saying what if marijuana companies were allowed to have TV ads like Big Pharma does. And enjoy.
Do you have trouble falling asleep because of your Adderall? Have trouble waking up because of your sleeping pills that you take because of your Adderall? Are you left in a fog from Xanax and constipated by Vicodin? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to talk to your doctor about weed. Weed is a twice daily, supplement that's been scientifically proven to treat many of the side effects that you're usually prescribed pills for.
I can't tell you how many of life's little moments I missed out on because of the constipated fog I was in after my doctor prescribed Vicodin and Xanax. My daughter's first steps, walking her down the aisle. I was done being spaced out and messed up on the toilet all the time. That's when I talked to my doctor about weed.
Weed is non-habit forming, no matter what Big Pharma or your middle school dare instructor tells you.
It was tough seeing my dad in pain after his accident. It was just as tough seeing him zonked out on prescription pills. He was so forgetful. But now, he won't stop remembering stuff.
You remember that first episode of Lost? And they were in the jungle, and you were like, what is that? And then they looked back on it, it was a polar bear? I don't think they ever explained that.
Symptoms of weed include extreme nostalgia, hunger, drowsiness, spontaneous laughter, and a newfound appreciation for the songs you already thought you liked.
Hey, you guys remember Ace of Base? That's so good.
Symptoms of weed do not include insomnia, loss of appetite, nausea, headaches, muscle spasms, inflammation, seizures, physical dependency, or the risk of overdose. So if you're one of the 119 million Americans taking prescription drugs and suffering from these symptoms, weed might be for you. And if you're not taking prescription drugs but just want to chill the f*** out, weed might also be for you. Weed. What side effects, man?
Okay, so that alone, so that of course that's our something fun. That's our something funny, and that to me, again, if you've watched any of my podcasts, I have nothing against marijuana legalization. I mean, not too long ago, Massachusetts just now started selling it. Denver's been selling it now for a couple of years. Canada just made it legal about a month ago. So at this point, the entire train itself of marijuana legalization is eventually going to head to where North America is just going to be all token. Now, to recap, I have nothing against it. I don't smoke marijuana. Never had any edibles. But I have plenty of friends who love it. And again, it helps. I have said it best about marijuana. It should never be considered a drug. It is literally a plant. Because somebody, sometime down the road, looked at that plant, sat there and said, I wonder how it would be like if I put fire to it. And yet discovered it. And then passed it along for everybody else to know. And aside from that, the cannabis plant has so many applications. I mean, hemp itself can be used as a biofuel, which in another separate story, that actually can be used to make ethanol, a different version of ethanol, which would be actually 5 times cheaper than crude oil gas, which means that we would not be dependent upon Canada and Saudi Arabia for our oil. At the same time, many health applications. Cancer cells could actually be used. Cannabis oil can be used to treat cancer cells, muscle spasms, body pains and aches, nerve damage issues, and things of that nature. It can actually help out PTSD for all those who have surgery or went through traumatic issues. It also can help people who actually have bipolar issues or things of that nature. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of everything marijuana can do. Now, I know, like I said, the whole commercial I once showed was because we've always been told it's a dangerous drug, but yet Big Pharma loves pushing out their OxyContinins, their Vicodins, their bipolar medicines, things of that nature, which eventually all have very nasty side effects, including death for overdose. So again, and this is the reason why I say it's going to be a hard fight uphill. But like I said, if someone ever did ask me would I support marijuana legalization, definitely. Only because everybody only sees the fact that it's a gateway drug. No, it's not. OxyContin and Percocet are gateway drugs. But they're legal gateway drugs because Big Pharma pushes doctors to push it on their patients. Please, oh please, tell me I'm wrong. But again, got nothing against it. Hopefully, the rest of the states will come along. And like I said, once it's legalized and once it's taxed, just like alcohol and tobacco is, there's going to be a definite change in America. I hope. But we're actually going to end it here, guys, for that. Like I said, I know started off a little bit late, so I apologize. But I do want to do some shameless plugging before I go. Because you already know how the Frack We Got Here podcast is usually every Wednesday from 9 to 10 p.m. Of course, I have my Off Limits podcast, where Nothing is Off Limits, which will be happening this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. Central Time, as we'll probably have a full crew of myself and Thomas, Vaughn, and Trace will all be here. So it's bound to be an interesting time when all 4 of us are in the room. Like I said, speaking of my friend Vaughn, which he was actually on here not too long ago, Big VZA Dot actually has podcasts of his own. He actually has the I Get That Reference VSTs, where he just goes a 30-minute podcast where he just goes over news and things of that nature, which he finds interesting and wants to share. He also has Rhythmness, which actually was just last night, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, where he actually goes over certain albums and just goes to a 4-grade tier system. If you want to know what that system is, you got to watch the show. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ, which is just basically him going over certain videos and things of that nature, which can be funny and also just, well, you have to watch because Random as Fuck. And also my other buddy Trace has The Bump Down, which is also a musical podcast, which actually was also last night as well, where he goes over what's on the charts and what's not, what's happening in the mainstream and underground. And like I said, I'm starting to call Trace Negro Damas, because this man has been able to figure out and guess who's actually going to be hot and coming up, and of course those that aren't. And I have to give him credit for that, because I have dogged him out a lot of times about his musical taste, and yet he seems to be right. So aside from all those podcasts, they can also be found in the I Get That Reference Facebook group. So if you're not a part of that, again, it is a group for all. You can join instantly. The only request that we have is that you participate. By participate, I mean you ask questions, you bring up posts, you just try to be social is all we ask you to do, because we don't want you to be weird and creepy. There's also YouTube pages as well. So if you look up I Get That Reference, if you look up The Bump Down, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up Off Limits Podcast, all those YouTube pages are up and live, and you can like, share, and subscribe as we try try to keep them updated with every podcast we have so far. Also look up Avon Witherspoon on Facebook and also Trace Brown also on Facebook for updates as far as when the next podcast will be, as well as actually you can add me on Facebook at William Buchanan to also see when I'll be actually uploading also when our next podcast will happen as well. And also let me not forget Thomas, who will be having his podcast starting very soon. Definitely looking forward to seeing it because like I said, he's got a mountain of knowledge that I believe is going to be very helpful, and I just can't wait for him to get started on this. And like I said, and also, we do have our Pick Up the Sticks podcast, which again will be next Thursday. But we'll also let you guys know as far as when that goes, as that's our video game podcast as well. So, with that being said, guys, like I said, thank you again for all those who stuck around, and for all the playback, you can go ahead and still reply as if it's live. Trust me, I'll see it. I know you Trump supporters will because you're too happy. You're still bragging about the midterm election, so there's that. But again, guys, like I say at the end of every other How the Frack We Got Here podcast, this whole thing is honestly about staying informed, because a long time ago, somewhere along the lines, we stopped actually asking questions. We stopped looking into what was told to us. And the way we can move forward as a country is to get informed. And by being informed, we must look into the issues ourselves, research it, find out what is true, and then encourage us to do the same. An informed country can make a hell of a lot better choices than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one will get you Trump. And unfortunately, that's how the frack we got here. So thank you guys for all watching. I hope you have a wonderful night. And like I said, stay informed. Peace.